Fred and George had woken up early that morning, wanting to get an early start on their pranking. The two brothers spent their morning sneaking into unlocked classrooms and setting up a variety of surprises for the unsuspecting students and teachers. They left fake spiders in Snape's desk drawer, caused random bursts of confetti in Filch's office, and even set a whoopee cushion on Professor McGonagall's chair. As they were leaving the classroom after setting up a small prank, Fred and George noticed a prefect walking down the hall in their direction. Immediately, the twins' eyes widened in surprise, quickly realizing they needed to act fast. With giggles stifled, Fred and George exchanged a quick glance, silently agreeing on a plan. Without a moment's hesitation, they darted off in the opposite direction, running away as quickly and quietly as they could before the prefect could spot them. As Fred and George raced through the halls in an effort to escape the prefect, they weren't paying attention to where they were going. In their haste, the twins rounded a corner quickly, causing them to collide suddenly with someone. The impact knocked the mysterious individual down to the ground with a small gasp. Fred and George froze for a moment, realizing they had accidentally knocked someone over. When they looked down, they saw that it was none other than Tom Riddle.
Tom lay on the ground, a bit caught off guard from the sudden impact. He blinked a few times as he tried to gather his bearings before looking up at the two boys with a sharp glare. "Watch where you're going, idiots," he hissed, clearly not pleased at having been knocked over unexpectedly.
Fred quickly apologized, scratching the back of his head sheepishly. "Oh, sorry, mate. We didn't mean to knock you down," he said quickly. As George turned around, his eyes widened when he spotted the other prefect approaching. Without wasting a moment, he tugged on Fred's sleeve, signaling for his brother to turn around. "Fred, we got to go," he whispered urgently, keeping an eye on the approaching prefect.
The other prefect's voice rang out from behind them, calling out to them firmly. "Hey, you two, stay right there."
Fred and George exchanged glances, realizing they were caught red-handed. They turned around, trying to put on their most innocent expressions as they faced the prefect.
Tom Riddle stood up, dusting himself off with an annoyed expression. "What did you two do now?" he grumbled, clearly exasperated by their antics.
Seeing the other prefect running towards them faster, Fred and George knew they had to act fast. They exchanged a quick glance, and without a word, they split in opposite directions, Fred going left and George going right. "Sorry, gotta run." George chimed in with a mischievous smirk, already a few feet ahead. "No time to explain. Catch us if you can," he added, taunting the prefect who was giving chase. As Fred and George ran through the empty hallways, their laughter echoed through the corridor. They could hear the sound of footsteps behind them as the prefect split up in an attempt to catch them. With a quick glance over his shoulder, Fred noticed Tom Riddle walking in his direction, still trying to clean his robes. He chuckled to himself, realizing that the Slytherin prefect was not pleased with the whole situation. As Fred turned the corner quickly, he was so focused on his escape that he didn't notice the Hufflepuff girl walking in his direction. With a surprised shout, he collided with her, causing both of them to stumble and fall to the ground in a tangle of limbs. "Oomph," he grunted as they landed on the hard marble floor. He quickly tried to regain his bearings, blinking in surprise as he found himself face to face with the Hufflepuff girl. "Bloody hell, I'm so sorry," he apologized hastily, scrambling to his feet and offering a hand to help her up. He heard the sound of approaching footsteps growing louder and knew that the prefects were approaching. Without hesitation, grabbing the Hufflepuff girl's hand and pulling her into a nearby closet, he ushered her in silently, closing the door behind them and trapping them both in the cramped space. Fred quickly hushed you, his fingers covering your mouth. "Shh, be quiet," he whispered through clenched teeth. "They're close by." The closet was dark and cramped, with barely enough room for the two of them to stand. Their bodies were pressed closely together in the confined space. Fred chuckled softly, keeping his hand over your mouth to muffle the sound. "Oh, come on. Can you blame us?" he replied with a smirk. He shifted his weight a bit, causing them to press even closer together in the cramped space. Besides, you can't deny that our pranks are entertaining, he whispered, his voice low and close to your ear. Fred chuckled, amused by your response. Oh, so you're an expert on pranks now, are you? He teased, his smirk growing wider. He leaned a bit closer, his breath warm against your cheek. And what would you know about fun and excitement, Miss Goody Two-Shoes? He challenged playfully, raising an eyebrow at you. Ow, he hissed, wincing at the elbow to his ribs. He quickly grabbed your arms, gently pinning them against the wall of the closet to prevent you from any more surprise attacks. His eyes flicked towards the door, listening intently to the footsteps outside. Be quiet, they're getting closer, he muttered, his voice barely above a whisper. Fred leaned a little closer, his voice hushed and low. Just some harmless mischief, he replied with a mischievous gleam in his eye. Put a few fake spiders in a professor's desk, a few whoopee cushions and whatnot. He couldn't help but smirk at your disapproving look. Don't worry, it's just a bit of fun, he reassured you, his grip on your wrists tightening slightly. He chuckled softly, his gaze locking with yours. You mean, who are we hiding from? He repeated, emphasizing the we in his reply. You're hiding with me now, and that makes you a culprit too, no? He continued to hold your wrists against the wall, his grip still firm, but not painful. You're in this with me now, like it or not, he said with a smirk, clearly enjoying the situation more than he should. Fred leaned in even closer, his lips practically brushing the shell of your ear. Oh, and, he whispered, his hot breath sending a slight shiver down your spine. Tom Riddle is out there, looking for us too. His grip on your wrist tightened ever so slightly at the mention of Tom's name. His expression darkened slightly. As you attempted to pull away, Fred's grip on your wrists tightened, preventing you from leaving. No, you're not going anywhere, he protested, a smirk playing at the corner of his lips. You can't leave now. We're both in this together, remember? He shifted his weight slightly, trapping you even more firmly against the wall, his body pressed closely against yours in the small closet. He leaned in even closer, his nose nearly touching yours. You know, he murmured, his voice a low, mischievous whisper. If a prefect spots us here, detention's pretty much guaranteed. He paused for a moment, enjoying the proximity between you. So, we're better off staying quiet and hoping they don't find us, eh? As he leaned in even closer, his face now mere inches from yours, a mischievous glint danced in his eyes. In a low, playful tone, he whispered, Tell me, have you ever had detention before? His smirk widened at the thought of your answer, clearly enjoying the intimate and secretive moment in the dark closet. Fred chuckled softly at your response, clearly amused by your determination to avoid detention. Ah, so you're a good girl, eh? He teased, his voice lowering to a more intimate tone. Always playing by the rules, never getting into trouble. Fred chuckled softly once more, his smirk widening at your response. He tilted his head slightly, studying your face with a mix of amusement and curiosity. A good student, huh? He whispered, his breath caressing your cheek. Always getting top marks, never causing trouble, following all the rules. Sounds rather boring, if I'm honest. He leaned in even closer, his body pressed against yours. Don't you ever feel like breaking the rules a bit? He purred, his words more of a dare than a question. Fred chuckled at your quick and firm response. His smirk widened into a full-blown grin as he found your unwavering commitment to the rules both irritating and oddly endearing. You really are a goody two-shoes, aren't you? He teased, his breath warm against your skin. He shifted once more, his body now pressed even more closely against yours, the space between then practically non-existent. No fun at all, he murmured, feigning disappointment even as his eyes gleamed with mischief. Fred leaned back slightly, following your gaze towards the door. He listened intently for any sign of footsteps or voices outside. After a moment, he shook his head slightly, still holding your wrists against the wall. "I think they're gone," he said softly, his gaze flickering back to your face. "But we should probably wait a bit longer just to be sure." Fred chuckled at your grumble, amused by your disappointment. "Oh, such a shame," he teased, his smirk widening as he feigned sympathy. "And here I am, preventing you from being the perfect punctual student." He gave your wrists a small, gentle squeeze, his fingers tracing small circles over your skin. "Looks like you're going to have to endure my company a bit longer," he whispered with a hint of mischievousness. Fred feigned a look of mock offence, dramatically placing a hand over his heart as if wounded. "Ruined your punctuality, have I?" he mocked, his eyes sparkling with light-hearted sarcasm. "Oh, how terribly tragic." He chuckled softly as he caught sight of your smirk. "I can only imagine the sheer horror you must be experiencing. Stuck here with me in this closet, instead of being the very first one in the Great Hall." He chuckled at your response, enjoying the banter and the way you clearly weren't taking his teasing too seriously. "Oh, my apologies," he said, his tone still laced with playful sarcasm. "I suppose I shouldn't have assumed that the perfect student would be trying to beat everyone else to the Great Hall." Seriously, though, he continued, his tone shifting to a more casual, light-hearted note. "Why do you put so much pressure on yourself to be perfect all the time? Always getting good grades, always following the rules, always being the epitome of a good student." He paused for a moment, studying your face intently. "Doesn't it get tiring? Never letting loose, never breaking the rules just a little, never being, I don't know, a teenager." As he listened to your explanation, he couldn't help but let out a scoff, his eyes flickering with confusion and incredulity. You enjoy being organised and neat. You take pride in your work and accomplishments. That's your idea of a good time. Bloody hell, that sounds like torture." He ran a hand through his hair, his expression a mix of bewilderment and amusement. "Don't you ever crave, I don't know, excitement, adventure?" Fred raised an eyebrow, intrigued by your reluctant admission. He leaned in slightly, his eyes locked on your face. "Sometimes, huh?" he echoed, a hint of a smirk playing at the corner of his lips. "So, deep down, even the perfect student has a rebellious streak, does she?" He shifted his weight once more, trapping you even more solidly against the wall, his hand now gently tracing your arm with his fingertips. Just as you rolled your eyes at him, a sudden knock on the door caused both of you to freeze in place. The unexpected sound echoed through the cramped closet, and the silence that followed was heavy with tension. Fred's grip on your wrists tightened slightly, his expression serious as he turned his attention towards the door. The door creaked open slowly, and there, standing in the doorway, was George, a mischievous smirk plastered on his face. He took in the scene before him, his eyes darting between you and Fred, who was still holding you against the wall. Well, 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 he drawled, a hint of amusement in his voice. "What do we have here?" As George stood there, the smirk on his face growing ever wider, Fred's sharp eyes couldn't help but notice something. The slightly protruding edge of a familiar piece of parchment half hidden in George's pocket. The Marauder's map. A jolt of realization shot through Fred's mind. If George had the map with him, it meant he likely knew they were in the closet and had been aware of their whereabouts this entire time. George chuckled at your stern tone, his smirk widening even more. "Trouble, us." He feigned innocence, putting a hand over his heart. "We're always on our best behaviour." Fred, who had stepped out beside his twin, couldn't help but let out a scoff. "Yeah, absolutely perfect angels, we are." The twins' smirk faded slightly as you mentioned Tom Riddle's name, their expressions turning more serious. Fred exchanged a quick glance with George, an unspoken understanding passing between them. They both knew the dangerous reputation of the young Slytherin prodigy. We'll be careful, Fred assured you, his voice taking a more serious note. Thanks for the heads up. As you walk off, leaving the twins alone, George turns to Fred with a smirk. You know, he begins, his tone full of teasing implication, for someone who claims to hate good girls, you were awfully cozy with her in that closet. Fred rolls his eyes in response, trying to play it off nonchalantly. Shut up, George. We were just hiding from the prefects, that's all. With a knowing grin on his face, George wrapped his arm around Fred's shoulder, pulling him along with him as they started walking down the hallway. Come on, Fred, he said cheerfully, his voice filled with eagerness. First day back after the holidays. Don't want to be late and miss out on the whole school now, do we?